The text arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was grading papers at the kitchen table. My mother's name lit up my phone screen, and for a second my heart actually lifted. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe she'd finally see us as family again. Annual Carter family dinner. Saturday, 6 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you, Emily. I read it twice, smiling. Then I scrolled down and saw the second message. Just you, Emily. Leave the kids at home. My coffee went cold in my hands. I stared at those words until they blurred. Leave the kids at home. Like Ethan and Lily were pets I could board for the evening. Like my children, her grandchildren, were somehow less than family. I set the phone down carefully, fighting the sting behind my eyes. 12-year-old Ethan was at school. 8-year-old Lily was coloring at the counter, humming softly. They had no idea their own grandmother considered them outsiders. My phone buzzed again. It's best for appearances. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. This was Margaret Carter at her finest. Cold, calculated, and cruel. I waited until after dinner to call her. My hands shook as I pressed her name. Emily, darling, she answered, voice smooth as silk. You got my message. Mom, I don't understand. Why can't Ethan and Lily come? Silence stretched between us. Then she sighed like I was being difficult. Emily, this is a formal dinner. Your brother's bringing Susan and the boys. They present well. Your situation is complicated. My situation. My voice cracked. You mean my divorce? I mean your children come from a broken home. It's not appropriate for this setting. Surely you understand. I gripped the counter. They're your grandchildren. And I love them, but this dinner has standards. I can't have people asking uncomfortable questions. In the background, I heard my brother Daniel's voice. He knew. He'd known all along and said nothing. Mom, please. Emily, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Come alone or don't come at all. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, unable to move. Behind me a small voice spoke. Mom. Turn. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face pale. He'd heard everything. Saturday came too fast. I told myself I was going to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. I told Ethan and Lily I had a work dinner. The lie tasted bitter. I arrived at my mother's house at exactly 6. The dining room gleamed with crystal and silver. Margaret wore pearls and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daniel and Susan were already seated with their twin boys, who looked scrubbed and perfect. Emily. My mother kissed the air near my cheek. So glad you could make it. Alone. That last word was a warning. Dinner was excruciating. Margaret praised Susan for maintaining such a beautiful home and family. She complimented the twins on their manners, their grades, and their sports achievements. Every compliment to them was a knife aimed at me. Susan just has that natural maternal grace, Margaret said, smiling. Some women are born for it. Daniel's wife blushed. Oh, Margaret, you're too kind. It's true. Family values matter. Stability matters. I cut my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, unable to eat. To those who never settled for less, Margaret said, raising her glass. Everyone toasted. Everyone but me. I set down my fork carefully. Ugh. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Where are you going? My mother asked. Home. To my children. I walked out without looking back. Margaret called after me, but I didn't stop. I drove home with tears streaming down my face, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. When I pulled into the driveway, Ethan and Lily were at the window. They ran to the door as I came in. I forced the biggest smile I could manage. How was work? Lily asked, hugging my waist. Good, baby. Really good. But Ethan watched me too closely. He saw the redness around my eyes and the way my voice cracked. 12, he was already too perceptive, too protective. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Around midnight I heard footsteps. A note slid under my door. I got up and unfolded it. Ethan's careful handwriting. Don't worry, Mom. I'll fix it. My heart broke and swelled at once. The next morning, Ethan started asking questions. Mom, why doesn't Grandma like us? I was making pancakes, trying to act normal. She does like you, honey. Then why don't we visit her? We're just busy. He wasn't satisfied. Over the next few days, his questions got sharper. Why did Uncle Daniel get to bring his kids? What made us different? Did Grandpa feel the same way before he died? I deflected every time, but Ethan was building something in his mind. I could see it in his eyes, the wheels turning, the hurt transforming into determination. One afternoon I came home from school to find the attic door open. I climbed the creaky stairs and found Ethan sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by boxes. Ethan, what are you doing up here? He looked up startled. Just looking at old stuff. Is that okay? Of course. But dinner's ready. He followed me down, but I noticed he carried something small tucked into his jacket. I didn't ask. I should have. That night, I heard him whispering to Lily through the wall. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone was serious. Protective. What Ethan found in that attic box would change everything, though I didn't know it yet. Inside were papers from my father's office. Things Margaret must have stored and forgotten. Letters, property deeds, financial documents, and one envelope marked confidential in my father's handwriting. Ethan took it to his room and opened it carefully. His hands trembled as he read. It was a copy of my father's will. The real one, not the version Margaret had shown everyone. And there, in clear legal language, it stated that the Carter estate, the house, the land, everything, was to be split between Margaret and me. Co-ownership, equal shares. But when Grandpa died 3 years ago, Margaret told everyone he'd left everything to her. She'd shown us a different will. She'd made me believe my father had forgotten me. Ethan read the words again. Transfer of ownership, Carter estate, co-signed by Emily Carter. His grandmother hadn't just excluded him and Lily from dinners. She'd stolen from his mother. She'd lied to everyone. She'd built her perfect life on a foundation of fraud. He carefully folded the papers and hid them under his mattress. She stole from you, Ethan whispered to himself in the darkness of his room. The next day at school he couldn't focus. Mrs. Patterson asked him twice if he was feeling okay. He nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. That afternoon, he researched property law on the school library computers. He learned about wills, inheritance, and fraud. At 12 years old, Ethan Carter was building a case. At home, I noticed he was distracted. Everything okay, buddy? Yeah, Mom. Just thinking about a school project. I ruffled his hair. Don't work too hard. If only I'd known what he was planning. That week, Lily asked me why we never went to Grandma's house anymore. I told her Grandma was busy. The lie felt heavier each time. Ethan watched me make excuses, and something hardened in his expression. He was done watching me hurt. Done watching his little sister feel rejected. Done letting Margaret Carter control our lives. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts until he found a name he barely remembered. Aunt Grace. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Cream-colored, expensive paper. Margaret's handwriting. You're cordially invited to celebrate Margaret Carter's 60th birthday. Saturday, April 15th, 6 p.m. The Riverside Club. I opened it, already knowing what I'd find. At the bottom, in smaller print, adult guests only. My children weren't invited to their grandmother's milestone birthday. I crumpled the invitation and threw it away. Then I retrieved it, smoothed it out, and tucked it into a drawer. Evidence. Though of what, I wasn't sure yet. Ethan came home from school and saw the invitation on the counter. I'd forgotten to put it away. Her birthday, he asked. Yeah. She's having a party. Are we going? I hesitated. I don't think so, honey. His jaw set. We should go. Ethan. We should go, he repeated, firmer this time. Then he walked to his room and closed the door. Through the wall I heard him tell Lily, "We're going anyway. Don't worry." I sat down exhausted. Part of me wanted to skip it entirely. But another part, the part that had been pushed down and silenced for years, wanted to face her, to finally stop running. That evening my phone rang. An unknown number. "Emily. It's Grace. My father's sister." I hadn't spoken to Aunt Grace in over a year. She lived in Oregon now, and we'd drifted apart after Dad died. "Grace. How are you?" I'm calling because your son reached out to me." My stomach dropped. "Ethan." "Yes. He asked me some questions about your father's will." "Emily, I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago." The room tilted. "What do you mean?" Grace's voice cracked. "Your mother lied to you. Your father left you half of everything. The estate, the investments, everything. Margaret convinced me to stay quiet. She said it would cause family drama, that it was better this way. I was a coward, Emily. I let her manipulate all of us. I couldn't breathe." What? Your father made it clear. You were supposed to co-own the Carter estate. Margaret forged documents. She convinced the lawyer to present an altered version. I have proof." Tears streamed down my face. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid. But your son isn't. He's braver than any of us. And your father would be ashamed if he knew what your mother did." We talked for an hour. Grace promised to help, to bring the original documents to Margaret's birthday party if I wanted. When I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Then I walked to Ethan's room and opened the door. He looked up from his desk, eyes wide. "Guilty. You contacted Aunt Grace." "I'm sorry, Mom. I found papers, and I needed to know if they were real." I sat on his bed. "They're real." He moved next to me. We sat in silence, my arm around his shoulders. "She's going to regret every word she ever said about us," Ethan whispered. I kissed the top of his head. "Maybe she will." The days leading up to Margaret's birthday felt heavy. I tried to focus on teaching, on my kids, on normal life. But everything had shifted. Ethan was preparing something. I could see it in the way he stayed up late on his laptop, in the way he printed things when he thought I wasn't looking. One evening, I found him in the garage with the old scanner, feeding document after document through. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Just a school project, Mom." "About what?" He looked at me steadily. "Truth." I didn't push. Part of me didn't want to know. The night before the party, I almost called Margaret to say we weren't coming. My finger hovered over her name. Then Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Mom, we should go. For closure." "Honey, it's just going to hurt." "Maybe. But sometimes hurt is how healing starts." At 12 years old, my son sounded wiser than I'd ever been. "Okay," I said quietly. "We'll go." He smiled, small, determined. "Thank you." That night I saw him pack something into his backpack. Something small that fit in his pocket. A USB drive labeled Truth. I spent 2 hours getting ready, trying on 3 different dresses. Nothing felt right. How do you dress to face the woman who stole your inheritance and rejected your children? I finally chose something simple. Navy blue, modest, forgettable. I didn't want to stand out. But when Ethan came downstairs, he wore his best shirt and tie. Lily had on her favorite yellow dress. They looked beautiful, strong. "Ready?" "Yes." "Ready," Ethan said. The drive to the Riverside Club was quiet. I gripped the wheel too tight. Lily hummed nervously in the back seat. Ethan stared out the window, face unreadable. When we pulled up, the club was magnificent. String lights, valet parking, guests in evening wear. Margaret had spared no expense for her 60th. We walked inside together. Immediately heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Margaret appeared, resplendent in silver silk. Her smile froze when she saw Ethan and Lily. "Emily, you brought them." Not a question. An accusation. "They're family, Mom." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll discuss this later." She swept away to greet other guests, leaving us standing alone in the entrance. Daniel approached, looking uncomfortable. "Hey sis, glad you came. Are you?" I asked quietly. He had the decency to look ashamed. Dinner was a spectacle. Long tables draped in white linen. Centerpieces of roses and orchids. Margaret held court at the head table, surrounded by friends and distant relatives. We were seated at the back, far from the spotlight, exactly where Margaret wanted us. Throughout dinner she made little comments, not directly to us, but loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Some people just show up uninvited, don't they? Awkward laughter rippled through the guests. My face burned. Lily looked confused. Ethan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. "Just wait." I didn't understand what he meant. The meal dragged on. I pushed food around my plate, unable to eat. Every glance from Margaret felt like a judgment. Every whisper from other tables felt like mockery. Finally, dessert arrived. Margaret stood, glass in hand, ready to make her grand speech. The room quieted. All eyes turned to her. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, smiling warmly. "Family means everything to me. Legacy, integrity. These are the values my late husband and I built our lives upon." Felt sick. She was rewriting history in real time. Tonight, I want to celebrate not just 60 years, but a lifetime of. The lights flickered. The room dimmed, then brightened. A projection screen descended behind Margaret. She frowned, turning. "What's happening?" The screen lit up with a slideshow. Old family photos appeared. Margaret and my father on their wedding day, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. "Who started this?" Margaret asked, flustered. No one answered. The photos continued, and guests smiled, thinking it was planned. Then the images changed. Documents appeared on the screen. Official-looking papers with legal letterhead. My father's signature. Name. Last will and testament of Thomas Carter. The document read, "I hereby bequeath the Carter estate in equal shares to my wife, Margaret Carter, and my daughter, Emily Carter." Gasps filled the room. Margaret's face went white. "Turn it off," she hissed to the staff. But no one knew how. More documents appeared. Bank transfers showing Margaret moving funds solely into her name. Forged signatures. A letter from a lawyer questioning the discrepancies. The evidence mounted, slide after slide, each one more damning. Margaret stood frozen, mouth open, as her carefully constructed reputation crumbled. Then Ethan stood. He walked calmly to the microphone at the front of the room. "Hi everyone. I'm Ethan. Emily's son. Margaret's grandson." The room was dead silent. Every eye turned to this 12-year-old boy in his too big tie. Margaret tried to speak. "Ethan, sit down. Grandpa wanted everyone to know the truth," Ethan said, voice steady. "He left my mom half of everything. But Grandma hid it. She changed the papers. She lied." His words landed like stones in water, rippling out. "She told us we weren't good enough to come to family dinners. She said we came from a broken home. She made my mom cry." His voice cracked. "But the truth is, she's the one who broke everything." Few people pulled out phones, recording. Others whispered urgently. Margaret finally found her voice. "This is absurd. This child is manipulating." "I have proof," Ethan said. He held up the USB drive. "Everything's right here. The original will. The transfers. All of it." Daniel stood face pale. "Mom, is this true?" Margaret's mouth opened and closed. No words came. Then the doors at the back opened. Aunt Grace walked in, carrying a leather folder. She moved through the silent crowd and stood beside Ethan. "It's all true," Grace said. "And I have the notarized originals." The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Shock, anger, confusion. Cameras flashed. Margaret sank into her chair, trembling. Grace opened the folder and pulled out documents. Thomas Carter's original will, signed and witnessed. property transfer documents showing equal ownership to Emily, and correspondence where Margaret explicitly requested these documents be suppressed. She handed them to the nearest guests, who passed them around. Each person who read them looked up at Margaret with dawning horror. Daniel approached, papers in hand. "Mom, you told me Dad left everything to you. You said Emily understood." "She did understand," Margaret said weakly. "Emily never cared about money. That's not the point." Daniel's voice rose. "You lied. You committed fraud." Susan pulled their boys close, eyes wide. Other guests began gathering their things, whispering and casting accusatory glances. Margaret looked around wildly, seeing her social circle dissolve before her eyes. "Please, everyone, this is a misunderstanding." "No, Mom," I said, finally standing. "This is the truth. And I'm done pretending otherwise." Ethan returned to my side. Lily held my hand. Together we walked through the crowd toward the exit. Behind us, Margaret's voice broke. "Emily, please don't do this." I stopped but didn't turn around. "You told me to leave my kids at home. You called us broken. You humiliated us over and over." I looked back at her. "You did this." Then we left. The cool night air hit my face, and I could finally breathe. We drove home in silence. Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Ethan stared out the window, processing what he'd just done. "Are you okay?" asked him. "I think so." "Are you mad?" "No, honey. I'm not mad." "Good. Because she needed to hear it. Everyone needed to hear it." He was right. 4 years, I'd protected Margaret's image, swallowed her insults, made excuses. Ethan had done in 10 minutes what I couldn't do in decades. He'd told the truth. When we got home, I tucked Lily into bed, then sat with Ethan. "That was incredibly brave," I said. "I learned from you, Mom. You've been brave my whole life. I just helped people see it." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "I love you so much." "I love you too." That night, my phone exploded with messages. Some supportive, some curious, some angry. I ignored them all. The next morning, a call came from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello." Sobbing. Heavy, broken sobbing. "Emily, please. Please, I need to talk to you." My mother's voice shattered. 2 days later, I agreed to meet her. Not at her house. I couldn't go back there yet. Instead, we met at a small coffee shop downtown. Margaret looked 10 years older. No makeup. Hair barely combed. She'd aged overnight. We sat across from each other, coffee untouched. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I'm so sorry." "Why did you do it?" She twisted her napkin. "When your father died, I was terrified. Terrified of being alone, of losing control, of not being enough." She looked up, eyes red. "You were always his favorite. So kind, so strong." I was jealous. The confession hung between us. "You stole from me because you were jealous." I told myself I deserved it. I'd given up my career for him. Raised you kids. Managed the household. The house should have been mine. She wiped her eyes. "But it wasn't about the house. It was about proving I mattered more than you." Sat back numb. And Ethan and Lily. Seeing them reminded me of my failures. Your divorce, your independence, it all made me feel small. So I tried to make you feel small instead. Silence stretched long and painful. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't expect you to. I need you to know I was wrong. About everything." We sat there until our coffee went cold. Eventually I stood. "I forgive you, Mom. But we're done living under your roof of shame. I'm taking what's mine, and I'm building something new." She nodded, tears streaming. "I understand." I walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years. With Grace's help, I hired a lawyer. A good one who specialized in estate fraud. Within weeks, we had everything documented, filed, ready. Margaret didn't contest it. She signed the settlement papers quietly, dividing the estate as my father had intended. I stood in the lawyer's office, pen in hand, and signed my name to the deed. Ethan stood beside me watching. "You did this," he said softly. "We did this," I corrected. The estate was split. Margaret kept the main house. I received the lake cabin Dad had loved, the place where he'd taught me to fish, where we'd spent summers as kids. It was smaller, simpler, perfect. A week later an envelope arrived. Inside was a check from Daniel. "Selling my share of the land," his note read. "You deserve it more than I do. I'm sorry I stayed silent. The first claim is yours." I called him and we talked for hours. Apologies, memories, plans to rebuild our relationship slowly, carefully. Susan got on the phone. "The boys ask about Ethan and Lily all the time. Maybe we could all get together." "I'd like that," I said. Family could be repaired. Not erased, but rebuilt with better foundations. The lake cabin needed work, but it had good bones. Ethan helped me paint. Lily chose colors for her room, lavender and white. We planted flowers in the garden, fixed the old dock, and cleaned windows until they sparkled. Every nail I hammered felt like reclaiming something stolen. Every wall I painted felt like freedom. One Saturday morning we sat on the porch drinking hot chocolate, watching the sun rise over the water. "This place feels like Grandpa," Lily said quietly. "It does," I agreed. Ethan leaned against my shoulder. "Do you think he'd be proud of us?" "I know he would." We sat in comfortable silence, breathing in pine and morning air. Later that day a car pulled into the driveway. My chest tightened. Margaret stepped out, tentative and small. I met her at the edge of the porch. She looked around at the cabin, the fresh paint, the flowers. "It's beautiful," she said. "Your father would love what you've done." "Thank you. May I come in?" I hesitated. Ethan appeared at my side, watchful. "You can visit," I said finally. "But there are rules now. Respect starts here." She nodded quickly. "I understand." We walked inside. Margaret moved slowly, taking in every detail. She stopped at a photo I'd hung, Dad and me, fishing off the dock. "I remember this day," she whispered. "You were so happy." I was. We sat at the kitchen table. Margaret folded her hands. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "But I'd like the chance to do better. To be a real grandmother." Ethan and Lily watched from the doorway. I looked at them and they nodded slightly. "You'll have that chance," I said. "But one boundary crossed and you're done." "I understand." Her voice was thick with tears. "Thank you." She didn't stay long. But when she left, something felt different. Not healed but possible. Months passed. Summer turned to fall. Margaret visited once a month, bringing cookies Ethan and Lily politely ate. She asked about school, about friends, and about their lives. She listened. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes old patterns crept back. Judgmental comments, subtle digs. But I called them out immediately now, and she apologized. Daniel and Susan brought the twins over for barbecues. The kids ran along the shore, laughing. The adults talked carefully at first, then more freely. Grace visited from Oregon and stayed a week. We sorted through old photos and told stories about Dad, cried and laughed in equal measure. One evening, Grace and I sat on the dock, feet dangling in the water. "You did it," she said. "You broke free." "We all did," I corrected. "You helped. Your father would be so proud." I looked out at the sunset, painting the water gold and orange. "I hope so." That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in years. Not about pain or anger, but about peace. About rebuilding. About the quiet strength of moving forward. In December, I decided to host Christmas at the cabin. A real family gathering. I invited Daniel and Susan, Grace, even Margaret, with clear boundaries in place. Ethan helped me decorate. Lily made paper snowflakes. We cooked together, laughing when the turkey got too brown and the cookies burned. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. Snow dusted the ground. Everyone gathered around the tree. Margaret sat quietly, hands folded, watching the kids open presents. When Lily handed her a drawing, Best grandma in crayon. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sweetheart, she whispered. Later over dinner Ethan stood. Can I say something? Everyone quieted. I just want to say thank you. For coming, for trying, for being here. He looked at me. And Mom, thank you for teaching us that family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for when people are willing to change. We raised our glasses. To family, Daniel said. To family, we echoed. Margaret looked around the table, something like wonder in her eyes. Maybe she was finally seeing what she'd almost destroyed. Maybe she was grateful it had survived despite her. After dinner she pulled me aside. Emily, I know I can't undo the past. But watching you with your children today, I see what real love looks like. And I'm ashamed it took me so long to learn. We're all learning, I said gently. She squeezed my hand. For the first time it felt genuine. Spring came again. The cabin's garden bloomed. Ethan turned 13. Lily learned to swim off the dock. I got a promotion at school, department head. More responsibility, better pay. Stability I'd built myself. One afternoon I sat on the porch with coffee watching the kids play. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. Mom's selling the main house. Says it's too big, too full of ghosts. She's moving to a condo. I stared at the message. The Carter estate, the house my parents built, the place I'd grown up, was being sold. I expected to feel sad. Instead I felt free. That house had never really been mine. This cabin was mine. This piece was mine. I texted back. Good for her. New beginnings. Yeah, he replied. New beginnings. That summer we filled the cabin with life. Friends visited. Laughter echoed across the water. The dock became a diving platform. The garden grew wild and beautiful. Margaret visited for Lily's 9th birthday. She brought a cake she'd baked herself. Lopsided but sincere. It's not perfect, she said nervously. Perfect is overrated, Lily replied, grinning. We ate cake on the porch, watched the sunset, told stories. Margaret stayed longer than usual, reluctant to leave the warmth. When she finally stood to go, she hugged each of us. Real hugs, not the air kiss performances of before. Thank you for letting me be part of this, she said. You're welcome, I replied. After she left, Ethan came and sat beside me. Do you think people can really change? He asked. I think people can choose to try. And sometimes that's enough. He nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad she's trying. Me too, buddy. Me too. On a warm Saturday in August, I hosted our first annual family dinner at the cabin. Not formal. Not fancy. Just us. Folding tables on the lawn. Mismatched chairs. String lights overhead. Food spread out buffet style. Grilled chicken, potato salad, corn on the cob and watermelon. Everyone came. Daniel's family. Grace. Margaret. Even some teacher friends and neighbors who'd become family by choice. As the sun began setting, Ethan stood and tapped his glass. I want to make a toast, he said, voice strong and clear. To family who choose love over pride. Who show up. Who fight for each other. To Mom, who taught us that standing up for yourself isn't mean, it's brave. Everyone raised their glasses. To family. The evening dissolved into laughter and fireflies. Kids ran through the yard. Adults swapped stories. Margaret sat with Grace, talking quietly, sometimes laughing. I looked around at this imperfect, pieced-together family and felt overwhelming gratitude. Later, after everyone left, I stood at the end of the dock. The lake was glass-smooth, reflecting stars. Ethan appeared beside me. Good day, he asked. The best. We stood in companionable silence. Mom. I'm proud of you. I pulled him close. I'm proud of you too. You started all this, you know. We started it together. The water lapped gently against the posts. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called. She tried to cut us out, I said softly. But all she did was teach us how to stand tall. Ethan smiled. Yeah, she did. We walked back to the cabin, where Lily was already asleep on the couch, and the lights glowed warm in every window. Real home. Built not on lies or appearances, but on truth and love and the courage to demand both. And that was worth everything.